6 million Jews murdered. A genocide executed with the precision of a deadly clockwork mechanism. Behind that machinery of a horror stood an elite force, fanatical, brutal, and trained with surgical discipline. They were the Waffen-SS, the most sinister troops of the Third Reich. Soldiers who answered directly to Hitler and were willing to carry out the bloodiest missions of the war. Today, we'll uncover the inhuman requirements demanded to join their ranks, how these men were shaped, and who was the diabolical architect behind them. In the early days of the Third Reich, a force emerged that would become the most feared symbol of Nazism. The Schutzstaffel, or simply SS, was not just another military unit. It embodied the very essence of National Socialism, a political and fanatical army that swore absolute loyalty to Hitler. Its emblem, 2 lightning bolt runes, became a sinister vow of obedience and blood. Within its many divisions, 2 nightmares coexisted: the Gestapo, spreading internal terror, and the Waffen-SS, the elite military spearhead that pierced through Europe's battlefields. From the outset, their goal was clear: not only to fight, but to instill fear and cement the regime's power. Jet black uniforms, lightning runes, skulls gleaming on their collars. The mere sight of an SS soldier was enough to instill terror. These weren't just uniforms, they were carefully crafted symbols of Nazi brutality. But those uniforms were only the surface. Behind them stood an army shaped by Hitler, not just for war, but for fanatical devotion to the Reich. Ideological indoctrination was just as critical as physical training. Blind obedience, loyalty to the so-called Aryan race, and a ruthless mindset were drilled into each recruit.
Und wenn die jüdischen Zeitungen heute glauben, auf versteckte Drohungen für die nationalsozialistische Bewegung einschüchtern zu können, sie sollen sich hüten. Einmal wird unsere Geduld zu Ende sein und dann wird den Juden das freche Lügenmaul gestopft werden.
Even the smallest details contributed to the image of terror. Blood-type tattoos, macabre insignias. Every symbol reinforced a legacy meant to last. They were horrifying not just for what they did, but because they ensured they would be remembered and feared for generations. Not just anyone could wear the black uniform of the Waffen-SS. Hitler wasn't merely recruiting soldiers, he was forging ideological guardians, men who would represent the future of Nazi Germany. The requirements were strict, even perverse. Mandatory Nazi Party membership. Ages 17 to 22, minimum height of 1.75 meters, perfect health and athletic build, documented Aryan ancestry for at least 2 generations. It was a racial and political filter disguised as military selection. Only 15% of applicants were accepted in the early years. But as the war dragged on, the standards loosened, even while the indoctrination grew more extreme. Most recruits came from the Hitler Youth. They weren't just taught to fight. They were trained to be the ideological clergy of the thousand-year Reich. Zealots tasked with spreading racial purity across the world. Thus, recruitment became a meticulous construction of a racial warrior caste. Soldiers shaped to reflect Hitler's darkest vision. It was from this process that Europe's most feared force emerged, Holocaust, a war machine that branded German history with blood and fire. A grey figure, round glasses, calm demeanor. The appearance of a harmless bureaucrat. But behind that face lurked one of the most sinister criminals of the 20th century. Heinrich Himmler, the mind behind the Nazi extermination machine. Like a puppet master, he pulled the strings of racial madness and unbridled cruelty. As Reichsführer SS, he wasn't just a military commander. His influence spread like poison through every corner of the Third Reich. He became Hitler's closest advisor. Under his leadership, the SS evolved from elite guards to the favored instrument for carrying out the Führer's darkest plans. Himmler orchestrated the final solution, created the concentration camp system, and perfected mass extermination, turning suffering into procedure.
Ein Volk ist so lange groß, als es treu ist. In dem Augenblick, wo die Völker und wo die Soldaten untreu werden, in dem Augenblick verlässt sie das Schicksal und in dem Augenblick stürzen sie hinab in den Abgrund.
He wasn't just a shadowy executioner. He was a fanatical ideologue. Obsessed with breeding a pure Aryan race, he pushed for inhuman medical experiments under the guise of science. In the war's final days, he tried to save himself by secretly negotiating with the Allies, betraying Hitler. But in May 1945, he was captured. In Himmler's hands, the SS became something far worse than soldiers. They became demons, leaving permanent scars on modern history. Their march across Europe was like the shadow of a plague. Wherever the SS advanced, they left a path of blood, fire, and terror. From the 1939 invasion of Poland to the collapse of the Reich, these troops committed atrocities with brutal efficiency. Mass shootings, rapes, entire villages annihilated. Women, the elderly, and children, none were spared by this machinery of terror. But the height of horror took place in the camps. Auschwitz, Sobibor, Treblinka, names forever tied to inhumanity. There, under Himmler's command, the SS executed the Holocaust, the systematic extermination of millions of Jews, Roma, and other persecuted groups. Survivors recall a hell beyond comprehension, grotesque experiments, daily torture, and gas chambers run with factory precision. Dehumanization reached monstrous extremes. Tens of thousands were slaughtered in mere hours, as if life meant nothing. Even decades later, many perpetrators showed no remorse. Some even claimed they were just following orders. Death became the SS's signature. Their legacy, one of history's deepest wounds. The Waffen-SS weren't just a faceless machine. They had names, men who embodied the regime's fanaticism and cruelty. Reinhard Heydrich, the blonde beast, charismatic and merciless, the mastermind of the Night of the Long Knives and a central ideologue of Nazism. His icy ruthlessness terrified even fellow Nazis. Joachim Peiper, the burning youth of the Reich. At just 29, he led armored divisions on the Eastern Front. His boldness made him an SS icon, but his name remains forever stained by the Malmedy massacre, where Allied POWs were executed. Kurt Meyer, Panzer, a blitzkrieg tactician admired for his bold maneuvers, tried after the war for war crimes, though he always claimed he was only following orders. Hans Ulrich Rudel, the Iron Knight, the most feared Stuka pilot on the Eastern Front, destroyed over 500 tanks, the only one to receive the Knight's Cross with oak leaves, swords and diamonds, respected even by enemies, but ideologically loyal to the bitter end. These men gave the Waffen-SS a human and monstrous face, brave and commanding, but always servants of a fanatical, racist empire. By war's end, the Wehrmacht and Waffen-SS had carved unhealable wounds into history. On battlefields, in scorched towns, in death camps, their footprint was cruelty turned into routine. At Nuremberg, the final verdict was clear. The SS was a criminal organization, guilty of crimes never seen before in modern times. Their name was seared into Germany's memory, forever linked to hatred, fanaticism, and death. Nazi indoctrination had turned ordinary men into killers, ready to murder their neighbors for racial reasons alone. It wasn't theory, it was fact, and the evidence still speaks.
Hermann Wilhelm Goering, on the counts of the indictment on which you have been convicted, the tribunal sentences you to death by hanging. Joachim von Ribbentrop, death by hanging. Fritz Saukel, death by hanging. Julius Streicher, death by hanging. Wilhelm Frick, death by hanging. Hans Frank, death by hanging. Alfred Rosenberg, death by hanging. Wilhelm Keitel, death by hanging.
The Waffen-SS, once Hitler's elite, became a symbol of disgrace. Their story remains a living reminder of how far evil can go when a racist ideology commands a disciplined military. To remember is a duty, not just to understand the machinery of horror, but to make sure history never repeats itself. Thank you for joining us once again. We'll see you in the next episode of Military History.